Hey family, welcome to Mr. Gray Family, where every story begins with us. A woman cried out, her voice breaking through the noise of machines and hurried footsteps. Please, something's wrong. Stay with me, a nurse said quickly, adjusting the bed as it rolled down the hallway. You're doing everything right. I can't, she gasped, gripping the rails, her knuckles pale. It hurts. Something's not right. Another voice cut in, sharper this time. We need that blood now. Where is the donor? No one answered. A monitor let out a sharp, uneven sound. Vitals are dropping. Call again. We already did. Call again. The hallway tightened around the moment. Every second felt like it was slipping too fast to catch. On the bed, Sophia squeezed her eyes shut as another wave hit her, stronger than the last. Her breath came in short bursts, uneven, like her body was trying to keep up with something it didn't understand. Twins, someone said under their breath. She's not stable. We don't have time to wait. Then we don't wait, the doctor replied. We move. Miles away, a phone kept buzzing against a glass desk. Once, twice, 3 times. Liam glanced at it, irritation already forming. Unknown number. Normally, he would have ignored it. He had deadlines stacked on top of decisions that couldn't wait. But the phone didn't stop. He stared at it for a second longer than usual, then picked it up. Hello? There was noise on the other end. Not casual noise. Movement. Urgency. A voice trying to stay controlled. Is this Liam Carter? Yes. Sir, this is Baltimore General Hospital. We have a patient in critical condition. We urgently need a blood donor. Your records indicate you're a match. Liam frowned, sitting up straighter. A match for who? Sir, we don't have time to explain. It's life-threatening. We wouldn't call if it wasn't serious. There was a pause. Not long. Just enough. Liam ran a hand over his face, already standing. I'm on my way. He didn't ask another question. Back at the hospital. Heart rate's unstable. She's losing strength. Where is he? No answer. Sophia turned her head slightly, her voice barely holding together. Please, don't let anything happen to them. You're doing everything you can, the nurse said, softer now. Stay with me. Just stay with me. Sophia nodded weakly, but her eyes drifted, like she was trying to hold on to something beyond the room. Liam's car moved through Baltimore traffic with controlled urgency, not reckless, not careless, but faster than usual. His grip on the wheel tightened. His mind kept circling one thing. Why him? Hospitals don't just call CEOs out of nowhere. Not for something like this. He changed lanes, exhaling sharply. It didn't matter. Someone needed help. That was enough. Still, something in his chest didn't settle. A quiet pull he couldn't explain. Before we go further, take 1 second to like this video and drop a comment. It helps this story reach more people than you think. And if you believe some moments in life aren't coincidences, subscribe now. You're going to want to see how this unfolds. Welcome to Mr. Gray Family, a storytelling universe built for people who crave meaning, emotion, and unforgettable narratives. Here, every story begins with a spark and ends with a feeling you'll carry long after the video ends. Love, betrayal, family, secrets, lessons. It's all here, wrapped in immersive narration that makes you forget everything else. If you're searching for stories that pull your heart, challenge your mind, and keep you coming back, subscribe now. Your story begins the moment you choose to stay. By the time Liam stepped into the hospital, everything felt faster. The air, the movement, the way people spoke without finishing sentences. Liam Carter? A nurse called. Yes. This way, please. He followed without hesitation. They walked quickly down a hallway, passing rooms, voices, the steady rhythm of machines doing their jobs. Sir, we'll need your consent. There are risks, but given the situation, do whatever you need to do, Liam said, his voice firm but lower now. The nurse gave a quick nod, handing him forms as they kept moving. Just sign here and here. He didn't read them fully. He signed. They turned a corner. And that's when it happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just a moment that refused to move. A hospital bed rolled past in the opposite direction. Liam's step slowed, then stopped, because the person on that bed, He knew her. Even before his mind said her name, his chest reacted first. Sophia. The name barely left his lips. The nurse beside him paused slightly. Sir? But Liam wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Sophia. Her face tightened in pain. Her body curled slightly as another contraction hit. A nurse leaned close, speaking to her, guiding her breathing. Sophia turned her head and saw him. For a second, nothing else existed. Not the hallway, not the voices, just recognition. Clear, immediate, real. Her eyes widened slightly, like she wasn't sure if she was seeing him or remembering him. Liam felt something drop inside him. Not confusion, not panic, something heavier. Sophia didn't speak. She didn't need to. Everything was already there. In the way she looked at him, in the way her expression shifted from shock to something quieter, something deeper. Then her face tightened again as the pain returned. She gripped the side of the bed. The nurse beside her spoke quickly, trying to keep her focused. The moment broke, but not completely, because something had already connected. Sir, we need to keep moving, the nurse guiding Liam said gently. He didn't respond right away. His eyes stayed on Sophia as they wheeled her past. Then, a thought caught up to him. Sharp, clear, impossible to ignore. Critical labor, urgent blood match, twins, and Sophia. Here, now, Liam swallowed, finally stepping forward again. But everything had changed, because he wasn't just answering a call anymore. He was walking into something personal, something unfinished. And whether he was ready or not, he was already part of it. The hallway felt longer now, not because it had changed, but because Liam had. His steps slowed just slightly, enough for his thoughts to catch up with him, and then run ahead. Twins. The words stayed with him, not as information, as weight. He hadn't asked for details when the call came. He hadn't needed them. Someone needed help, and he showed up. That was simple. But this wasn't simple anymore. Sir, we're almost there, the nurse beside him said, keeping her pace steady. Liam nodded, but his focus wasn't on where he was going. It was behind him. Back in that hallway, back to the moment her eyes met his. Sophia, after all this time. Here. A quiet thought slipped in, uninvited, uncomfortable. He didn't say it out loud, didn't even fully form it. But it was there. The timing. He tried to dismiss it, tried to keep things practical. People move on. Life continues. That's how it works. But something didn't sit right. Not because he wanted answers, but because his mind had already started connecting things he wasn't ready to face. They reached a set of double doors. Right through here, the nurse said, holding one open. Liam stepped inside. Bright lights, clean surfaces, controlled environment. Everything felt structured again, like something he understood, but the feeling didn't follow. Have a seat here, please. He sat. A technician began preparing the equipment, speaking calmly, explaining steps, risks, timing. Liam heard the words. He just didn't hold on to them, because something else had taken their place. He leaned back slightly, staring ahead, and for a second, the present blurred, not fully, just enough for memory to slip in. Sophia laughing at something small, the way she used to look at him when he was too serious, the way she noticed things he ignored. He exhaled slowly. That was a different time, a different version of both of them. Sir, I need you to stay relaxed, the technician said, adjusting his arm gently. Liam nodded. I'm fine. But his voice didn't carry the certainty he intended. Somewhere down the hall, Sophia shifted slightly on the bed, her breathing uneven, but controlled. The nurse beside her kept her steady. You're doing well. Just stay with me. Sophia nodded faintly, but her mind wasn't fully in the room. It had gone somewhere else. Not far. Just back a few minutes, to a face she hadn't expected to see again. Liam. She closed her eyes briefly as another wave passed through her. Of all days, she whispered under her breath, not angry, not confused, just aware. Life had a way of bringing things back when you least expected it. And this moment, this wasn't random. It couldn't be. Back in the procedure room, Liam's jaw tightened slightly. The thought returned, clearer now, more defined. He didn't want to follow it. But it stayed. Twins. Timing. Sophia. He shifted his gaze, looking toward the door for a second, like he could see through it. Like distance would give him clarity. It didn't. He wasn't someone who avoided reality. That had never been his way. He faced things, handled them, solved them. But this wasn't something you solve. This was something you understand. And right now, he didn't. A small silence filled the room as the technician continued working. Machines hummed softly, steady, reliable. Everything was functioning exactly how it should, except him. His mind tried one more time to push it away. Focus on what matters. She needs help. That's it. That's all. But something deeper answered back. Then why does it feel like more? Down the hall, Sophia opened her eyes again. Her expression had shifted, not from pain, from awareness, because she knew something Liam didn't, and sooner or later, that gap would close. Back in the room, Liam let out a quiet breath, staring ahead again. He didn't chase the thought anymore, but he didn't ignore it either. He let it sit, unanswered, unresolved, because something had already started to change, not outside, inside, and without saying a word, without asking a single question, he understood one thing clearly. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. All right, Mr. Carter, we're ready. The technician's voice was steady, practiced, the kind of calm that came from doing this over and over again. Liam glanced at his arm as they positioned it carefully. Last chance, the technician added. If you feel uncomfortable or want to stop at any point, just say so. Liam shook his head once. I'm good. Go ahead. No hesitation, no second thoughts. As the procedure began, Liam leaned back slightly, his eyes drifting toward the ceiling. White, still, too quiet for everything moving inside him. A few minutes ago, this was simple. A call, a decision, an action. That was how he lived his life. Clear steps, clear outcomes. But now there was something layered beneath it, something he hadn't planned for. He didn't try to define it, didn't label it. He just felt it. The technician adjusted something beside him. You might feel a little lightheaded. That's normal. Liam nodded faintly. I've had worse, he said under his breath. The technician gave a small, polite smile, but didn't respond. Silence settled again, and with it, memory, not loud, not overwhelming, just small, steady moments finding their way back. Sophia sitting across from him at a table, tilting her head slightly as she listened. You think too far ahead, she had said once, tapping the table lightly. You ever just sit in a moment without trying to control what comes next? Liam had frowned slightly. That's not really how things get done. She smiled, not arguing. Maybe not. But it's how things get felt. He exhaled quietly. At the time, he hadn't fully understood what she meant. Now, sitting here, not in control of what came next. He did. Back then, he always had an answer. A plan, a direction. But right now, he didn't know what came after this room. And strangely, he didn't try to force it, because something had already shifted. Not in his situation, in him. This wasn't about obligation anymore. It wasn't about being the person who shows up because it's the right thing to do. It was simpler than that, and heavier. It was about her, not the past version of her, not the memory. Her, right now, in that room, fighting through something he could only partially see. He turned his head slightly, eyes resting on the closed door. There was distance between them, just a hallway, but it felt like years. And still, he was here. The technician checked the flow again. Everything's going smoothly. Liam gave a small nod. Good. He let his eyes close for a moment. Not to rest, just to steady himself. Another memory surfaced. Uninvited. Clear. The night everything ended. Sophia standing across from him, her voice calm but firm. You don't really see me. Liam had shaken his head immediately. That's not true. I didn't say you don't care, she replied. I said you don't understand. He remembered the pause that followed, the one where he should have said more, asked more, tried harder, but he hadn't. He opened his eyes again. The ceiling came back into focus. For the first time since that night, he didn't think about who was right, or who could have done things differently. He thought about something else. If he had stayed, if he had listened more, If he had tried to understand her world instead of fitting her into his, would they still be here? Not in this hospital. In life. The thought didn't bring regret the way he expected. It brought clarity, because whatever answers came next, whatever truth waited outside this room, he knew one thing: he wasn't walking away from it. Not this time. The technician finished adjusting the final part of the process and stepped back slightly. "You're doing well, Mr. Carter. Just a little longer." Liam nodded, but his attention had already moved forward, past this moment, past the uncertainty, toward what came after, because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking like a CEO. He wasn't calculating outcomes. He wasn't protecting distance. He was present, fully, without control, without answers, and without needing them yet. Somewhere down the hall, Sophia took a slow breath, her body finally easing between waves. Her eyes opened slightly, her gaze unfocused for a moment, then steady. She knew he was still there. She hadn't asked. She hadn't needed to. And for reasons she didn't fully explain to herself, that mattered. Back in the room, Liam exhaled quietly. The weight in his chest hadn't disappeared, but it had changed. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was decision. Whatever this was, whatever waited on the other side of this moment, he would face it, stay in it, see it through. No distance, no avoidance, just presence. And, as the procedure continued, that decision settled into him, steady and clear. This time, he wasn't leaving anything unfinished. The ceiling above Liam faded from view, not because it changed, but because his mind moved away from it, back to a moment he hadn't thought about in a long time, not deliberately, just buried under everything that came after. Baltimore felt different that day, not quieter, not louder, just slower. Liam had noticed it the second he stepped out of his car. The event was already in motion. People gathered in small groups, conversations overlapping, light music playing somewhere in the background. It wasn't the kind of place he usually stayed long. He was there for visibility. That was it. A quick appearance. A few handshakes. Leave early. That had been the plan. You made it. Liam turned slightly as someone greeted him, offering a handshake. Of course, Liam replied, his tone polite, measured, wouldn't miss it. Even as he said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true, but it was expected, and Liam understood expectations better than most. He moved through the crowd with ease, not because he was comfortable, but because he knew how to navigate spaces like this. Conversations were brief, structured, efficient. How's business? Strong quarter. That's good to hear. Always is. A small nod, a slight smile. Move on. It was a rhythm. One he had mastered. Then something broke that rhythm, not loudly, just enough to pull his attention. "No, that's not what I meant," a voice said nearby, light but firm. Liam turned his head slightly and saw her. Sophia stood with a small group, her posture relaxed, one hand loosely resting at her side as she spoke. There was nothing rehearsed about her, no effort to impress, no attempt to control the moment. She was just there, present in a way that didn't try too hard. "I'm just saying," she continued, a small smile forming, "if you invite people, you should actually talk to them, not just stand there looking important." A couple of people around her laughed, not loudly, but genuinely. Liam watched for a second longer than he intended, not because she was the loudest person there, but because she wasn't, and somehow that made her stand out more. He didn't plan to walk over, but he did. As he approached, the conversation shifted slightly, the group opening just enough to include him without making it obvious. Sophia glanced at him briefly, then back to the person she had been speaking to. No pause, no adjustment. Liam spoke after a moment. "Is that your professional advice?" Sophia looked at him again, this time fully. A quick scan, not judgmental, just observant. "Depends," she said. "Are you asking as someone who invites people, or someone who avoids them once they arrive?" There was a slight pause in the group, not tense, just curious. Liam blinked once, caught slightly off guard. Then, unexpectedly, he let out a small laugh. "Fair question." Sophia's expression shifted, just slightly, not impressed, not dismissive, Just engaged now. I'm Sophia, she said, extending her hand casually. Liam. He shook her hand. Her grip was steady, not hesitant. Do you always answer questions with questions? Liam asked. Only when the first one needs clarification, she replied easily. A couple of people around them smiled again, but the conversation had already narrowed. Not intentionally, it just did. Liam tilted his head slightly. You're not from corporate. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Is it that obvious? Very. She let out a quiet breath, almost amused. Good, she said. I'd be worried if I blended in too well. There it was again. That difference. Liam noticed it more clearly now, where he chose words carefully. She spoke naturally. Where he controlled conversations, she let them move. And you? She asked. Do you always talk like you're representing something? Liam paused for half a second, then answered honestly, most of the time. Sophia nodded slowly, like she expected that answer. That sounds exhausting. It wasn't said with judgment, just observation. Liam considered responding, correcting, explaining, but instead, he didn't, because for the first time that evening, he wasn't thinking about what to say next. He was just listening. The conversation shifted again, lighter now, but something had already settled between them, not defined, not labeled, just there. Later, as the crowd thinned slightly and the music softened, Liam found himself standing beside her again, not by accident, but not fully planned either. You don't seem like you enjoy these things, Sophia said, glancing around briefly. I don't mind them, Liam replied. She gave him a look, not convinced. He adjusted slightly. I understand their purpose. That made her smile. There it is. What? That answer, she said. You didn't say you like it. You said you understand it. Liam looked at her for a moment, then nodded once. Fair. A small pause settled between them. Comfortable. Sophia glanced toward the edge of the event space. Walk with me. It wasn't a big request, not framed as one. Liam hesitated for just a second. Then, sure. They stepped away from the crowd, the noise fading behind them as they moved toward a quieter area near the water. The air felt different there, less structured, less observed. For a while, neither of them spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because it wasn't necessary yet. Then Sophia broke the silence. You don't slow down much, do you? Liam looked ahead. No. She nodded, like she already knew. You should try it sometime. He glanced at her. Why? Sophia smiled slightly, her gaze still forward, because not everything important moves fast. Liam didn't respond right away, but something about that stayed with him. Long after the conversation ended, and without realizing it, the plan he came with, to leave early, had already changed. The memory didn't rush forward. It unfolded the way those days had. Naturally, without forcing anything. After that night, Liam expected things to return to normal, back to meetings, deadlines, decisions stacked one after another. And for the most part, they did. But something small had shifted, not enough to disrupt his routine, just enough to stay in his thoughts. Sophia. He didn't plan to see her again so soon. But a few days later, he found himself walking into a small cafe he didn't usually visit. Not out of habit, just a quiet decision. And she was there, sitting near the window, one hand wrapped around a cup, the other resting loosely on the table as she listened to someone across from her. Liam paused for a second, not because he was unsure, but because something about the moment felt easy. Sophia looked up, not surprised, just aware. Well, she said, a small smile forming. You don't seem lost this time. Liam stepped closer. I could say the same. The person she was with stood shortly after, excusing themselves, leaving the space open without making it awkward. Sophia gestured lightly. Sit, if you're not in a rush. Liam glanced at his watch out of habit, then lowered his hand. I'm not. And that was how it started. Not with a plan, not with intention. Just time shared. Conversations didn't feel structured around her. They moved, sometimes slow, sometimes quick, but never forced. You always check the time like that? She asked once, noticing the habit. Liam looked down briefly, then back at her. It's routine. Sophia tilted her head slightly. Or control. He didn't answer right away, not because he disagreed, but because he hadn't thought of it that way before. You don't plan anything, do you? He asked instead. Sophia smiled. I plan enough to show up. The rest, I let it happen. That difference stayed between them, not as conflict, as contrast. Days turned into small routines, not official, not labeled, just consistent. A walk after coffee, a conversation that lasted longer than expected, a quiet moment that didn't need to be filled. One evening, they found themselves walking along the harbor again, the city behind them, the water steady beside them. You ever stop thinking about work? Sophia asked, hands tucked loosely into her jacket. Liam gave a short breath. Not really. She nodded, like she expected that. Do you want to? That question stayed for a second. I don't know how, he said honestly. Sophia glanced at him briefly, then forward again. You don't need to stop completely, she said. Just make space for other things. Like what? She smiled faintly. Like this. Liam looked around. Nothing dramatic. No event. No pressure. Just being there. And for once, he didn't feel the need to move on from it. Another time, they sat on a bench, sharing something simple to eat. Sophia laughed at something small, something Liam wouldn't have noticed on his own. You laugh at everything, he said. She shook her head lightly. No, just the things that don't need to be complicated. He watched her for a moment. You make things feel slower, he admitted. Sophia glanced at him, her expression softer now. Not slower, she said. Just real. That word stayed with him, because for someone who lived in constant motion, real felt different. It wasn't about time. It was about presence. And without realizing it, Liam started adjusting. Not completely, not dramatically, but enough. He checked his watch less, stayed a little longer, listened a little more, not because he was trying to change, but because being around her made it feel natural. There were no big moments, no sudden turning point, just a steady build. Until one evening, Sophia looked at him, a little more directly than usual. You know this isn't just casual, right? She said. Liam met her gaze. I know. There was no hesitation, no confusion, just understanding. Sophia nodded once, not surprised. Good, she said quietly, because neither of them needed to define it further. It was already becoming something, not fast, not forced, just real. Have you ever met someone who changed your pace in life? Comment below. The question lingered, not just for the audience, but in the space between them, because Liam knew, whether he said it out loud or not, she had. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like something to control. It felt like something to keep. It didn't break all at once. There wasn't a single moment where everything fell apart. It changed slowly, quietly, the way things do when two people stop meeting in the same place without realizing it. At first, it was small. Liam canceling plans. Not often, just enough to be noticed. I'll make it up to you, he said once over the phone, his tone steady, distracted. Sophia stood by the window, her hand resting lightly against the frame. You don't have to make anything up, she replied calmly. Just show up when you say you will. I said I would. Something came up. Something always comes up, she said, not sharply, just honestly. Liam didn't respond right away, not because he didn't care, but because in his world, that was normal. Work came first. It had to. I'll call you later, he said. Sophia looked down slightly. Okay. The call ended, and nothing exploded. Nothing dramatic happened, but something shifted. Days passed, then weeks. They still saw each other, still talked, still shared moments, but something underneath had changed. One evening, they sat across from each other at dinner. The table between them wasn't large, but it felt like it held more distance than before. You're here, Sophia said, her tone light but not playful. Liam looked up from his phone, setting it down. I said I would be. She nodded slowly. You did. A short silence followed. Sophia glanced at him, studying him for a second. Are you actually here, though? Liam frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means... She paused, choosing her words carefully. You're sitting in front of me, but your mind is somewhere else. That's not fair, Liam replied. I didn't say it to be fair, she said. I said it because it's true. Liam leaned back slightly, his expression tightening. I'm dealing with things you don't fully understand. Sophia held his gaze. Then help me understand. That should have been the moment, the opening, but instead, Liam exhaled, looking away briefly. It's complicated. Sophia's expression softened, but not in relief. In realization, everything with you is, she said quietly. Another silence settled in, heavier this time, because the conversation wasn't about one missed dinner or one phone call. It was about something deeper. You live in a world where everything has a reason, a structure, a plan, Sophia continued. And I get that. I do. But I don't live like that. Liam looked back at her. I've never asked you to. You didn't have to, she replied. It just happens. He didn't understand. Not fully. And that gap, it stayed. I'm trying, he said after a moment. Sophia nodded. I know. That wasn't the problem. I just don't think you see what I need, she added. Liam's brow furrowed. I'm right here. She gave a small, almost tired smile. That's the part you don't get. Another pause. Sophia leaned back slightly, her voice steady. You show up physically, but emotionally, you're always somewhere else. Liam didn't respond, because part of him knew. She wasn't wrong, but knowing and changing were not the same thing. And I don't want to compete with your work, she continued. I don't want to feel like I have to fit into a schedule just to matter. You matter, Liam said, more firmly now. Sophia held his gaze. Then make it feel like that. The words stayed between them, clear, simple, difficult. Liam opened his mouth slightly, closed it, because for the first time, he didn't have a structured answer. And Sophia saw that, not as failure, but as truth. She looked down briefly, then back at him, her voice softer now. I'm not asking you to change who you are, she said. I'm asking you to meet me somewhere in between. Liam sat there, still, processing, but not moving. And that was the moment things began to end, not with anger, not with raised voices, just distance, becoming clear. Sophia exhaled slowly. You don't really see me, she said. Liam shook his head instinctively. That's not true. I didn't say you don't care, she replied gently. I said you don't understand. The same words, the same weight, and this time, they landed fully. Neither of them spoke after that, not because there was nothing left, but because they both knew where this was going. There was no argument, no final push, just acceptance. Sophia stood first. Liam followed a second later. They walked outside together, not touching, not distant, just aware. At the edge of the sidewalk, Sophia stopped. This isn't working, she said. Liam looked at her, not surprised, not ready either. I know, he replied quietly. She nodded once, and that was it. No promises, no dramatic goodbye, just two people who cared about each other, but couldn't meet in the same place anymore. They turned in different directions, and for a while, that was where the story stayed. Liam didn't look back, not because it didn't matter, but because looking back wouldn't change anything. The next morning, his schedule started earlier than usual. Meetings stacked, calls lined up, decisions waiting, and he stepped into all of it without hesitation. Work didn't ask questions. It didn't require emotional clarity. It didn't expect anything beyond performance. That made it easier. By midday, he was already deep into negotiations, reviewing numbers, shifting priorities. His tone stayed steady, his responses sharp. Nothing about him suggested anything had changed. And that was the point. If there was space to think, he filled it. If there was silence, he replaced it. Not intentionally, just consistently. Days turned into a routine that didn't leave room for reflection. Earlier mornings, later nights, fewer breaks. When his phone lit up, it was always work. And if it wasn't, he ignored it. Sophia didn't call. That should have made things easier, cleaner. Instead, it made the absence clearer. Her presence had never been loud. She wasn't someone who filled space just to be noticed. So, when she was gone, it didn't feel empty. It felt missing. Liam noticed it in small ways. A quiet moment where he would have said something to her. A thought he would have shared. A place he passed that reminded him of a conversation. He didn't stop when those moments came. He moved through them. Because stopping meant sitting with something he wasn't ready to face. Weeks passed. His world stayed the same on the surface. If anything, it improved. More control, more structure, more results. People around him noticed. "You've been on top of everything lately," someone said during a meeting. Liam gave a brief nod. That's the job. And he meant it. Because work was something he could manage, unlike what he left behind. There were moments, though, short ones, where something tried to surface, usually late, when everything slowed down just enough. He would sit in his office, the city stretching out beyond the glass, light steady, movement constant. That's when it came back. Not the breakup itself, not the conversation, just her. The way she looked at him when he didn't notice something simple, the way she spoke without overthinking it, the way she didn't try to fit into his world. She just existed in her own. Liam would shift his focus quickly, open something, review something, call someone, anything to redirect. Because once the thought settled, it didn't leave easily, and he didn't have time for that. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Across the same city, Sophia moved differently, not faster, not slower, just forward. Her days didn't look like Liam's. They weren't packed with meetings or deadlines, but they weren't still either. She kept herself occupied, not to avoid something, but to manage it. Because there was something she was carrying now, something new, something quiet. She didn't talk about it, didn't share it, didn't reach out, not because she didn't think about Liam. She did, but every time the thought came, so did the memory of that last conversation. "You don't really see me." And more than that, what came before it, the distance, the missed moments, the gap that never fully closed. So she made a decision, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Some things you don't explain, you carry, and she chose to carry this alone. Back in his world, Liam stood at the window again, his reflection faint against the glass. Everything looked exactly how it should, controlled, ordered, but something didn't sit right. He couldn't name it, didn't try to, because naming it would mean acknowledging it, and he wasn't ready for that yet. What he didn't know, what he hadn't allowed himself to consider, was that the story he thought had ended had already continued, just without him in it. The memory didn't shift abruptly. It stayed connected to Liam, but moved slightly, just enough to reveal what he never saw. After that night, Sophia didn't go home immediately. She walked, not with a destination, just movement. The city was still active, but she stayed on the edges of it, where conversations faded and the air felt quieter. Her steps weren't rushed, but they weren't slow either. She replayed the conversation in pieces, not every word, just the parts that mattered. "You don't understand." She had said it calmly, and she meant it. But what stayed with her wasn't what she said. It was what he didn't. There were moments in that conversation where Liam could have stepped closer, asked more, stayed in it. He didn't, and that told her everything she needed to know. By the time she reached her place, the decision had already settled. Not about ending things. That part had happened. About what came next. The days that followed were quiet, not empty, just focused. Sophia didn't reach out, didn't check in, didn't wait for a message, because she understood something clearly now. If she had to explain her place in his life, then she didn't have one, and that realization didn't come with anger. It came with acceptance. But then, something changed. At first it was small, easy to overlook, a shift in how she felt physically, not dramatic, just different. She noticed it in the mornings, in her energy, in the way her body didn't respond the same way it used to. She didn't rush to conclusions. Sophia wasn't someone who reacted without thinking. She paid attention, waited, but the pattern didn't fade. It became clearer, and eventually, It became undeniable. She sat still for a long time after realizing it, not moving, not speaking, just processing. There was no confusion about what it meant. She knew. The timeline didn't need explanation. And for a moment, just a moment, Liam crossed her mind in a different way, not as someone she missed, not as someone she had lost, but as someone connected to what was now part of her life. She didn't push the thought away, but she didn't hold on to it either, because the situation wasn't simple. Telling him would mean more than just sharing information. It would reopen something that had already closed. And she thought about that carefully, not once, not quickly, more than once. Across days, what would he say? Would he understand now? Would anything actually change? Or would it become another version of the same distance, just with more weight attached to it? Sophia didn't assume the worst, but she didn't rely on hope either. She thought about who Liam was, not who he could be, not who he might become, who he had shown himself to be, focused, driven, always moving. And she thought about herself, what she needed, what she valued, what she had already accepted. The answer didn't come from emotion. It came from clarity. She wasn't going to pull him into something he hadn't chosen, not out of pressure, not out of expectation, and not at a time when their connection had already broken. So she made a decision, quietly, firmly. She would handle it on her own, not because she wanted to prove anything, not because she didn't care, but because she understood the reality of where they stood. And she refused to build something important on uncertainty. Days turned into weeks. She adjusted, step by step, not perfectly, not easily, but steadily. There were moments, short ones, where she thought about telling him anyway, usually when things felt heavier. But each time, she came back to the same place, not now. And eventually, that became final. Back in the present, Liam sat in the chair, the procedure continuing without interruption. He didn't know any of this, not the realization, not the decision, not the reason behind her silence. To him, the story had ended months ago, clean, simple, final. But just beyond his understanding, it had already taken a different path, one that moved forward quietly, without announcement, without permission, and now, without warning. That path had led them back into the same room. The steady rhythm of the machine filled the room, measured, consistent, uninterrupted. Liam sat still, his arm positioned carefully, the process continuing exactly as expected. On the surface, everything was controlled, but his thoughts had moved far from that room. They returned slowly at first, not all at once, back to the hallway, back to her face, back to that moment. When recognition hit before logic had time to respond, Sophia. He hadn't said her name out loud since they separated, not in conversation, not even to himself. And yet, seeing her again had brought everything back without effort. But this wasn't just about seeing her. It was what came with it. The words from earlier replayed in his mind. Not conversations, not memories, details, critical condition, labor, twins. He shifted slightly in the chair, his gaze lowering for a second. His mind started doing something he couldn't stop. It began placing things in order, not emotionally, logically. The last time they saw each other, the space between then and now, he didn't rush it, didn't jump to conclusions. But the more he let the timeline form, the less room there was to ignore it. He exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening just enough to show something had changed. It wasn't certainty, but it wasn't doubt either. Somewhere in between. The kind of realization that doesn't announce itself, but settles in anyway. The technician glanced at him briefly. "You doing all right?" Liam nodded once. "Yeah." But his voice carried something different now. Not distraction, not confusion. Focus. Because now, he wasn't just thinking about what was happening. He was thinking about what it meant. Down the hall. Sophia adjusted slightly on the bed, her breathing more controlled now, but still uneven. A nurse spoke quietly beside her, guiding her through each moment. "You're doing well. Just stay with me." Sophia nodded faintly, but her thoughts had moved too, not back, forward, because she knew, at some point, they would have to speak, and when they did, there would be questions, not loud ones, not aggressive ones, but clear, and she wasn't avoiding that. She just wasn't rushing it. Back in the room, Liam leaned his head back slightly, staring ahead again. The ceiling didn't matter anymore. The room didn't matter. What mattered was the connection forming in his mind, piece by piece. He thought about the last weeks before they separated. There had been no indication, no conversation, nothing that suggested this, and yet, that didn't mean it wasn't there. It just meant he hadn't seen it, and that thought, that possibility, sat heavier than anything else, because it wasn't about what happened, it was about what he missed. The technician made a final adjustment, checking the process again. Almost done. Liam gave a slight nod, but his attention didn't shift. Not anymore. He wasn't trying to push the thought away. He let it stay, let it build, not into panic, not into assumption, into awareness, because something had already changed the moment he saw her. This was just catching up to it. He ran the timeline one more time, slower, clearer, and this time, there was no resistance, just a quiet understanding forming beneath everything else. Not confirmed, but close enough to feel real. His hand tightened slightly against the armrest, not from fear, from the weight of what this could mean. Across the hallway, Sophia closed her eyes briefly, gathering her strength between waves. She didn't know what Liam had realized yet, but she knew. He would, and when he did, it wouldn't be a moment you prepare for. It would just happen. Back in the room, the machine slowed, the process nearing completion. "All right, we're wrapping up," the technician said. Liam nodded again, but nothing about him felt like it had just started. It felt like something had already moved forward, without waiting for confirmation, because sometimes understanding doesn't need proof to begin. And as he sat there, still, focused, one thing settled clearly in his mind. This wasn't just a coincidence, and whatever came next wouldn't be simple. The machine slowed, then stopped. "All right, we're done here." The technician moved with quiet efficiency, removing the line and pressing a bandage firmly against Liam's arm. "Hold this for a moment." Liam did as instructed, his attention already drifting past the room. "You may feel a little weak," the technician added. "Just sit for a minute before standing." Liam nodded. "I'm fine." But he didn't stand immediately, not because of the procedure, because of what came after it. The room felt smaller now, not physically, just contained. Everything that mattered was no longer here. It was down the hall. He pressed the bandage slightly, his jaw set in a way that showed restraint more than tension. A minute passed, then another. He stood, no hesitation this time. As he stepped out into the hallway, the noise returned. Footsteps, voices, monitors echoing from nearby rooms, but his focus cut through all of it. He scanned the direction Sophia had been taken earlier, same hallway, same urgency, different moment. A nurse passed by quickly, and Liam stepped forward just enough to stop her. "Excuse me." She paused, already mid-motion. "Yes." "The patient from earlier, critical labor." Sophia. Recognition flickered across her face. "She's in delivery," the nurse said. "They're working on stabilizing her." Liam held her gaze. "Is she okay?" The nurse didn't answer immediately, not because she didn't want to, because she was choosing her words carefully. "She's still in a critical condition," she said, "but the transfusion helped. It gave them time." "Time." Liam nodded once. "Can I see her?" "Not yet," the nurse replied. "They're still working." Liam stepped back slightly, giving her space to continue. She moved on quickly, and just like that, he was left standing in the middle of the hallway. No instructions, no next step, just waiting. Liam wasn't someone who waited, not like this. Waiting meant lack of control, uncertainty, dependence on something outside his reach. But there was no alternative here, so he stayed. He moved to a chair along the wall and sat down, leaning forward slightly, his hands resting together. Time didn't move the way it usually did. Minutes stretched, not because they were longer, because nothing was happening that he could influence. A door opened somewhere down the hall. Liam looked up immediately. Not her. Another patient, another situation. The hallway continued moving around him, but his focus remained fixed. He thought about getting up, walking, doing something, but every instinct told him, stay here. So he did. His gaze dropped briefly to his arm. The bandage, a small reminder of what he had just done. It didn't feel significant, not compared to what was still unfolding. A few more minutes passed. Then, movement. A doctor stepped out from behind the doors Liam had been watching. Liam stood immediately. The doctor glanced around briefly, then approached him. You're Liam Carter? Yes. The doctor nodded once. Your blood helped stabilize her, he said. We were able to manage the immediate risk. Liam's shoulders eased slightly, not fully, just enough. She's okay? He asked. The doctor held his gaze. She's stable, for now. The words landed carefully. But she's not out of danger yet, the doctor continued. We're still monitoring both her and the babies closely. Liam absorbed that without interruption. Can I see her now? He asked again. This time, the doctor considered it. For a short time, he said. She'll need rest, but she's conscious. That was enough. The doctor gestured slightly toward the hallway. Come with me. Liam followed, his pace steady, measured, but something inside him had shifted again. Not uncertainty, not hesitation, readiness, because whatever he had started to understand, whatever connection had begun forming in his mind, he wasn't avoiding it anymore. He was about to face it, and this time, he wasn't walking away. The door opened quietly. Liam stepped inside. The room felt different from the hallway, not quieter, just contained. Sophia lay on the bed, her body still, her breathing slower now, but not fully settled. The strain of everything she had gone through was visible, not in a dramatic way, but in the small details. The way her shoulders rested, the way her hands stayed still against the sheet. For a second, Liam didn't move, not because he didn't want to, because he was taking in the reality of it. Sophia, here, right in front of him. She turned her head slightly and saw him. There was no surprise this time, just recognition. Hey, she said softly. Liam stepped closer, stopping at a distance that felt natural, not too close, not far. Hey, a short silence followed, not uncomfortable, just careful. Sophia studied him briefly, her expression steady, despite everything she had just gone through. You made it, she said. Liam gave a small nod. Yeah, another pause, not empty, just full of things neither of them rushed to say. You helped, she added quietly. They told me. Liam glanced down for a second, then back at her. I was already here. It wasn't modesty, just fact. Sophia held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Still, she said, you showed up. The words landed differently now than they would have months ago. Liam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he asked the only thing that mattered in that moment. How are you feeling? Sophia let out a slow breath. Tired. There was a faint trace of humor in her voice, but it didn't last long. But I'm okay, she added. Liam nodded once. That was enough for now. Another quiet stretch passed between them, not because they had nothing to say, because they were choosing what mattered first. Liam shifted slightly, his attention focused fully on her now. I didn't know. The words came out steady, not rushed, not defensive, just honest. Sophia looked at him, really looked, and for a moment, she didn't respond. Not because she was surprised, because she was measuring what he meant. Then she nodded. I figured, no accusation, no tension, just acknowledgement. Liam exhaled slowly. I would've, he started, then stopped. Sophia watched him. He didn't finish the sentence, not because he didn't have something to say, because he wasn't going to fill the space with something incomplete. Instead, he adjusted. I didn't know, he repeated, quieter this time. Sophia's expression didn't change much, but something in her eyes softened slightly. I know, she said, and she meant it, because this wasn't about blame. It never had been. Another moment passed. Sophia shifted slightly on the bed, adjusting her position carefully. Liam noticed immediately. You okay? She nodded. Yeah, just adjusting. He stepped a little closer without thinking, then stopped, not out of hesitation, out of awareness. They weren't the same as before, and both of them understood that. You always did that, Sophia said after a moment. Liam frowned slightly. Did what? Step in, she replied. Right when something feels off. He looked at her. That's not a bad thing. She gave a small, tired smile. No, it's not. Another pause. This one lighter, because for the first time since he walked in, the tension had eased just a little. Liam glanced briefly toward the side of the room, then back at her. They said the transfusion helped. Sophia nodded. It did. A quiet breath left her. I felt it, she added. Things slowed down a bit after. Liam didn't respond right away, because hearing that, knowing that, it mattered more than he expected. You did what needed to be done, she said. Liam shook his head slightly. I did what anyone would have done. Sophia looked at him, holding his gaze. No, she said calmly. You did what you chose to do. That landed differently, because choice. That was something Liam understood, and this time, he hadn't overthought it. He had just acted. The room settled again, but this time, it wasn't heavy, just real. Sophia's eyes dropped briefly, then returned to him. You've been okay? She asked. The question was simple, but it carried more than it sounded. Liam considered it for a second. Busy, he said. Sophia nodded slightly. That sounds like you. There was no edge to it, no criticism, just recognition. And you? He asked. Sophia paused. Not long, just enough. I've been managing, she said. Liam didn't press further, because he understood something now. Not everything needed to be explained immediately. Some things unfolded when they were ready. Another quiet moment passed. Then Liam said it again, not as a defense, not as an excuse, just as truth. I didn't know. Sophia met his gaze. I know, she replied, and this time, there was no distance in the words, just understanding, because in that room, in that moment, they weren't trying to fix the past. They were just facing the present, together. The room stayed quiet after that, not empty, just steady. Liam remained where he was, his attention fully on Sophia now. No distractions, no urgency pulling him away. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about what came next. He was staying in what was already here. Sophia watched him for a moment, not carefully, not cautiously, just clearly. She had seen him like this before, but not like this. There was something different now, less distance, less control, and that made what she needed to say feel heavier, not because she didn't want to say it, because once it was said, everything would shift. She took a slow breath. Liam noticed. You okay? He asked quietly. Sophia nodded. I am. A short pause followed. Then she looked at him again, direct, steady. The twins. She began. Liam didn't interrupt, didn't move. He just listened. Sophia held his gaze. I wasn't sure how to tell you, she said. Her voice stayed calm. No tension, no hesitation. Or when. Liam's expression didn't change much, but something inside him had already prepared for this moment. Not fully, but enough. Sophia continued. It didn't feel right to say anything after how things ended. Liam took that in without reacting, because he understood what she meant. She wasn't accusing him. She wasn't justifying anything. She was explaining, simply, I needed to figure things out first, she added. Another breath, and by the time I did. She didn't finish the sentence immediately, not because she didn't know how, because she wanted to say it clearly, without adding anything unnecessary. They're yours. The words landed without force. No dramatic pause, no shift in tone, just truth. Liam didn't move, not right away, because the moment didn't hit him like a shock. It settled, slow, heavy, like something that had already begun forming, now fully in place. He exhaled quietly. His eyes didn't leave hers, not searching, not questioning, just absorbing the timeline, the distance, the things he hadn't seen. All of it aligned now, not perfectly, but clearly. Sophia didn't look away. She let him take it in at his own pace. There was no urgency in her expression, no pressure, because she wasn't asking for anything. She was just telling him what was true. Liam finally shifted slightly, his hand resting against the side of the bed, not reaching for her, not pulling away, just grounding himself in the moment. "You're sure?" he asked. The question wasn't doubt. It was confirmation. Sophia nodded once. "I am." That was enough. Liam looked down briefly, then back at her. No confusion, no denial, just understanding settling deeper. Another breath left him, slower this time. "I should have known," he said quietly. Sophia shook her head gently. "No," she replied. "You couldn't have." He didn't argue, because part of him knew. She was right, but another part, the part that had been connecting everything since the hallway, felt the weight of what he had missed. Not just the situation. Again, silence returned, but this time, it wasn't careful. It was full. Liam lifted his gaze again, meeting hers. "You've been dealing with this alone," he said. Sophia didn't hesitate. "Yes." No explanation, no defense, just truth. Liam nodded once, not in agreement, in acknowledgement, because now everything made sense. Why she hadn't reached out, why there had been distance even before the end, why the silence stayed after. None of it was random. It was all connected, and he hadn't been there to see it. That realization didn't come with guilt. It came with clarity, and with that clarity, something shifted again, not in confusion, in direction. Liam straightened slightly, his voice steady. "We'll figure this out." It wasn't a question. Sophia studied him for a second, not skeptical, not convinced either, just taking in what he meant. Then she nodded. "Okay, simple." Because right now, that was enough. No expectations, no promises beyond what could be held in the moment, just a starting point. And as the weight of everything settled between them, not pushing them apart, but placing them in the same reality, something became clear. This wasn't about going back, it was about what came next. If this moment hit you, share this with someone who believes in second chances, because sometimes life doesn't ask if you're ready. It just gives you something real and waits to see what you do with it. The moment didn't last long. A sharp shift in the room broke whatever stillness had settled. Sophia's expression tightened again. Her hand gripped the edge of the bed. A contraction hit, stronger than before. Her breathing changed immediately, short, controlled, but strained. Liam straightened. "You okay?" Sophia didn't answer right away. She focused on her breathing, her body already responding to the next wave building. A nurse stepped in quickly, adjusting the side of the bed. "We're not done yet," she said, her tone firm but calm. "Stay with me." Sophia nodded faintly, her eyes closing for a second. Another contraction followed, stronger. Her hand tightened again, this time without trying to hide it. Liam looked toward the door, instinctively, then back at her. Everything was happening again. Faster this time, more controlled, but still intense. "Hey," he said, stepping closer without hesitation now. "Focus on me." Sophia opened her eyes briefly for a second. She did, and that was enough. More movement filled the room. Equipment adjusted, voices low, but precise. "They're ready," someone said. "Good," another voice responded. Liam stayed where he was, not in the way, not distant. Present. Sophia's breathing shifted again, her body responding to instructions she didn't question. "You're doing well," the nurse said. "Just stay with it." Another contraction built, then hit. Sophia's grip tightened again, her jaw set as she pushed through it. Liam didn't speak. He didn't need to. He stayed close enough for her to see him, and when her eyes found him again, just focus. Time moved differently in that room. Not slower, not faster, just concentrated. Every second mattered. "Almost there," the nurse said. Sophia took a breath, then another, and pushed again. The tension in the room peaked. Then, a shift. A sound broke through, small, sharp, alive. Liam's head turned immediately. The first cry. It wasn't loud, but it filled the room in a way nothing else had. Sophia's body eased slightly, her breath catching as the pressure changed. "Keep going," the nurse said. "One more." Sophia nodded faintly, gathering what strength she had left. Liam stayed exactly where he was, not moving, not stepping back. Right there. Another push. Another moment stretched. Then, a second cry. Softer, but just as real. The room shifted instantly. Tension released. Not completely, but enough. "They're both here," the nurse said. Sophia's head rested back against the pillow, her breathing uneven but slowing. Liam didn't move right away, because something had just changed, in a way that didn't need explanation. He looked toward where the babies were being checked. Then back at Sophia. She looked at him, not saying anything, but there was something in her expression. Relief, exhaustion, and something else. Something shared. Liam stepped closer. "You did it," he said quietly. Sophia let out a faint breath. "We did," she replied. The words stayed between them, not heavy, not complicated, just true. A nurse approached, careful, holding one of the babies. "Do you want to see?" Sophia nodded weakly. Liam stood beside her as the baby was brought closer, small, wrapped, still adjusting to the world it had just entered. Then, the second, placed beside the first, two, real. Liam looked at them, not as an idea, not as a possibility, as something that now existed in front of him, and for the first time, there was no distance left in that realization, only presence. The room settled into a quieter rhythm, not silent, just calmer. The urgency that filled the space minutes ago had eased, replaced by careful movements and low voices. Sophia rested against the pillow, her breathing more even now, though the exhaustion was clear. Liam remained beside her. He hadn't stepped away, not when things calmed, not when there was finally space to. He stayed. The babies were close, wrapped, and placed carefully within view. Liam glanced at them again, not quickly, not in passing. He took his time. There was something about seeing them there, together, that made everything else feel secondary. No titles, no responsibilities outside this room. Just this. Sophia shifted slightly, her gaze moving from the babies to Liam. "You don't have to stay the whole time," she said quietly. Liam looked at her. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied. The words weren't firm. They didn't need to be. Sophia studied him for a moment, not questioning, just noticing, because before, he would have had a reason to leave. A call, a meeting, something waiting. Now, nothing pulled him away. "Okay," she said softly. That was enough. Time passed differently now, not stretched, not rushed, just steady. A nurse came in briefly, checking on Sophia, then the babies, adjusting things with quiet efficiency. Liam stepped slightly aside to give space, then moved back into place once the room cleared again. He didn't need instructions. He was paying attention. Sophia noticed that too. "You're different," she said after a while. Liam glanced at her. "How?" She held his gaze. "You're here," she said, "not just physically." Liam didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't something he could explain in a sentence. "I should have been like this before," he said instead. Sophia shook her head slightly. "That's not how it works," she replied. There was no blame in her tone, no revisiting the past, just acknowledgement. Liam accepted that, because he understood something now. You don't rewrite what already happened. You respond to what's in front of you. He turned his attention back to the babies. They were still, quiet. One shifted slightly, a small movement that caught his full attention. Liam leaned in just enough to see clearly, not touching, not interfering, just observing. Sophia watched him, not saying anything, because she didn't need to. The difference was visible, not in words, in behavior. The way he stayed focused, the way he didn't check anything else, the way he adjusted himself around the moment instead of trying to control it. "You don't have to figure everything out right now," she said quietly. Liam looked at her again. "I'm not trying to," he replied, and that was true. For once, he wasn't planning 5 steps ahead. He wasn't calculating outcomes. He was just present. A small shift came again from one of the babies. Liam noticed immediately. He glanced towards Sophia. She gave a faint smile. "You can hold them," she said. Liam hesitated for just a second, not from fear, from awareness. Then he stepped forward. Carefully, guided by instinct more than certainty, he reached out slowly, taking one of the babies with a level of attention he hadn't given anything else in a long time. Gentle, measured, he adjusted slightly, making sure he was holding them securely. The baby settled. Liam exhaled quietly, not relief, not tension, just something new. Sophia watched him. There was no need to interpret the moment. It was clear. This wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about correcting the past. It was about what he was choosing now. And that choice didn't come with words. It showed in where he stood, what he did, what he didn't walk away from. After a while, Liam carefully placed the baby back, making sure everything was as it should be. He didn't rush it. He stayed close. Sophia shifted slightly again, her voice softer now. "We'll need to talk about things," she said. Liam nodded. "I know." No hesitation, no avoidance, just understanding, "but not right now," she added. Liam glanced at her. "Whenever you're ready," he said. Sophia held his gaze for a moment, then nodded, because that was different too. No pressure, no timeline, just space. And for now, that was enough. The room stayed quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something that hadn't been there before. Not certainty, not resolution, just direction. And for the first time since everything began, that was enough to move forward. The room didn't change all at once. It shifted slowly, the way moments do when everything important has already happened. And what's left is what comes after. Sophia rested, her energy low but steady, the kind of tired that comes from going through something real, not just physical, everything. Liam stayed where he had been, not because he didn't know what to do, because he did. He didn't check his phone, didn't step outside, didn't look for a reason to leave. He adjusted the chair slightly, sitting closer, but still giving Sophia space, not too close, not distant, just present. The babies rested nearby, their breathing soft, their movements small but constant. Liam watched them again, longer this time, not trying to figure anything out, not analyzing, just taking it in. Sophia noticed. "You're quiet," she said softly. Liam looked at her. "I'm thinking," he replied. "About what?" He didn't answer immediately, because for once, he wasn't organizing his thoughts into something structured. "I don't want to get this wrong," he said. Sophia held his gaze. "You don't have to get everything right," she replied. "You just have to be honest." That landed, not as advice, as direction. Liam nodded once. "I'm here," he said. Simple, no long explanation, no added meaning, just truth. Sophia didn't respond right away. She let the words sit, because she had heard things before. Intentions. But this wasn't framed like that. It wasn't trying to convince her. It was just stated. "I see that," she said after a moment. And she meant it, because everything about him right now matched what he said. Not perfectly, not completely figured out, but real. Liam shifted slightly, his attention returning to the babies again. "They're ours," he said quietly. Sophia nodded. "Yes." No hesitation, no second layer to it, just fact. Liam let that settle, not as a realization anymore, as something he accepted fully now. And with that acceptance came something else, responsibility, not in the way he understood it before, not structured, not scheduled, something more direct. He looked back at Sophia. "I don't expect anything from you," he said. "Not right now." Sophia watched him closely. "I know things don't just fix themselves." He paused briefly. "But I'm not walking away from this." Again, not a promise, a decision. Sophia took that in. She didn't rush to respond, because she understood something too. This wasn't about what he said in one moment. It was about what he would do after. "We'll take it one step at a time," she said. Liam nodded. "That works. No pressure, no urgency, just movement. Forward." The room stayed quiet again, but now there was something steady in it. Not tension, not uncertainty, just possibility. Not the kind that demands answers, the kind that allows them. Sophia shifted slightly, her eyes resting on the babies. "They're going to need us," she said softly. Liam followed her gaze. "I know." And this time, there was no hesitation in his voice. Because this wasn't something he needed to think about. It was something he had already stepped into. Sophia glanced back at him. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. Liam gave a small, almost unnoticeable smile. "I won't be." That got a faint response from her. Not laughter, but something close. Because perfection wasn't what this needed. Presence was, understanding was, and for the first time, they were both standing in the same place, not in the past, not trying to go back to what they were, just here, building something new, slowly, carefully, and honestly. Liam leaned back slightly, his eyes moving between Sophia and the babies, not overwhelmed, not uncertain, just aware of what mattered now. And for once, that didn't feel complicated. It felt clear. Presence over pride, understanding over control, not as words, but as something he was already starting to live. Sophia watched him quietly, not expecting anything immediate, just observing what would come next. And for the first time since everything changed, she didn't feel like she had to carry it alone. Not because everything was solved, but because something had shifted in the right direction. And sometimes, that's where real change begins. If you made it this far, subscribe for more stories that actually mean something. Because some stories don't end with everything perfect. They end with something real. And that's what stays. Some moments in life don't come with warnings. They don't ask if you're ready. They simply arrive and reveal who you choose to be. Showing up matters more than saying the right words. Liam didn't have perfect answers. He didn't explain everything, but when it mattered most, he stayed. And sometimes, that's what people remember. Love isn't just about feeling. It's about understanding. Caring about someone means learning how they live, how they think, and what they need. Not expecting them to adjust to your world alone. Timing doesn't always end a story. It can pause at what feels like an ending might only be distance. And sometimes, life brings people back, not to repeat the past, but to face what was left unfinished. Pride creates distance. Presence closes it. Liam had everything under control, except what truly mattered. It wasn't until he let go of control that he finally became present. Responsibility isn't spoken. It's shown. He didn't make promises. He didn't try to fix everything in one moment. He simply stayed and chose not to walk away again. You don't need a perfect ending to have a meaningful one. Not everything was resolved. Not everything was easy, but it was real. And sometimes, that's enough to begin again.